I leaned back against the oak banister I'd spent the last 3 weeks restoring, letting the scent of varnish and sawdust settle into the quiet air. My workshop was finally silent, the kind of silence that feels like completion. The mahogany boards gleamed beneath the afternoon light, polished to a finish even my old professor would have nodded at. I wiped my hands on a rag, reached for my water bottle, and noticed my phone vibrating on the workbench. At first I ignored it. It was probably another client asking about renovation timelines or material sourcing. My business, Bennett Restorations, had been booked for months. Historic homes, old chapels, libraries that smelled of ghosts and glue. I loved them all. I loved rebuilding what time had tried to erase. The phone buzzed again, a low hum against the wood. Out of habit I checked. A photo filled the screen. My brother Ryan in a tuxedo. His fiancée Isabella, beaming beside him in a white gown that glittered like frost. Final rehearsal tonight. Can't believe it's almost here. The caption read. For a second I thought I'd misread it. Final rehearsal for what? I swiped to the next post. My cousin Mallory tagging friends under #BennettWedding. My aunt arranging white roses. My mother holding invitation samples. An invitation I never got. My throat tightened. I opened the comments. Dozens of them. Can't wait to celebrate next weekend. The venue looks stunning. Finally. You two deserve the world. Everyone was going. Everyone but me. The next vibration startled me so much I almost dropped the phone. Her name glowed across the screen like it always did before bad news. I hesitated, then answered. Hi, Mom. Clara, honey, she chirped too brightly. How are you? How's the new project? I swallowed the dry laugh that rose in my throat. It's fine. I just saw Ryan's wedding posts. I didn't know the rehearsal was tonight. Silence stretched. 3 seconds, maybe 4. Then the careful sigh I knew too well. Oh. That. Yes. That. I was going to call you about it, she said, and even through the phone I could hear the rearranging of tone, that subtle pivot from guilt to justification. Were you? I asked quietly. Before or after the wedding? Clara, she scolded, soft and patronizing. Don't make this about you. You've been so busy with your company. We thought you'd probably be tied up anyway. My free hand curled around the edge of the work table. You thought. Ryan didn't want to pressure you, she continued. You know how sensitive he is. He didn't want you to feel obligated to take time off. Sensitive, Ryan. The irony almost made me laugh. So you all just decided not to invite me, I said. Problem solved. That's not fair, she snapped. We didn't want to make things awkward. After what happened with the loan. The loan. My jaw tightened. The one I co-signed for his startup? The one I'm still paying. He was in a difficult place, she said quickly. It's not easy starting over. You know how hard things have been since the layoffs. And since when is defrauding your sister a career move? Clara, she said, the tone now sharp with wounded motherhood, you always take everything so personally. I am the person, Mom. She sighed, the long, exhausted exhale of someone forced to deal with a difficult child. I really don't want to argue. I have to help your father with the seating chart. We'll talk later, okay? The line clicked dead before I could reply. For a while I just stood there, phone in hand, the hum of the workshop pressing in around me. The varnish smell suddenly turned bitter. The golden light that had felt warm minutes ago now felt like mockery. I sat down on the step, staring at the floorboards. My parents were somewhere arranging flowers for a wedding I wasn't invited to. My brother, the same brother whose college tuition I'd once helped cover, was probably practicing his vows. Me. I was the afterthought that made things awkward. Memories came in flashes. Ryan at 12 breaking Mom's favorite vase and crying until I took the blame. Ryan at 18 borrowing my old car and wrecking it. Me at 21 getting my architecture scholarship and hearing Mom say, well, of course you did. You were always the responsible one. The responsible one. The fixer. The buffer between chaos and consequence. I walked to the window. The Portland skyline shimmered in the late sun, rooftops glowing like embers. Below, the city pulsed with life. People laughing on balconies, music spilling from open windows, a couple arguing on the sidewalk making up seconds later. Everyone connected to someone. Except me. The realization wasn't new, but tonight it felt heavier. My entire career was about restoring what others neglected, sanding scars out of wood, mending fractures, making things whole again. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe I'd been trying to restore people too. My phone buzzed again, a text from my neighbor Mrs. Dorsey. "Dear, have you seen the wedding posts? I'm so sorry. Families can be cruel." Even she knew. Another text followed, from Leah, my project manager and closest friend. "You okay? Just saw Ryan's posts. Want me to come over?" I typed and deleted half a dozen responses before settling on "I'm fine. Just tired." But I wasn't fine. I was tired, yes, but tired in the way that settles into your bones, the kind of fatigue that no sleep fixes. The fatigue of being unseen. I poured myself a glass of Merlot and sank into my armchair, the old leather sighing under my weight. The city lights blinked outside, blurred by the tears I refused to let fall. I wasn't going to cry over this. Not over them. After a long moment, I set my phone on the coffee table. Notifications kept popping up. More photos, more congratulations, more reminders that my family's definition of together didn't include me. I turned the phone face down. The silence returned, thick, deliberate. I could almost hear my own heartbeat in it. Then something shifted inside me. Not anger, not yet. Something colder, steadier. The click of a lock turning from the inside. For 34 years, I'd been the one holding the family together with invisible glue. I'd sent money when Ryan defaulted, soothed Mom when Dad withdrew, visited for every crisis, canceled projects to attend emergencies that weren't mine. I'd fixed, explained, forgiven. But this time, I picked up the phone, opened Instagram and slowly began to unfollow them. Ryan. Dead. Cousins. Each tap was a release. It wasn't revenge. It was inventory. I stared at the screen one last time, the tiny following button now gray. Then I whispered to no one in particular, "This time I won't fix what they've broken." Outside, the streetlights flickered on. The city's hum softened into a low, steady rhythm. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was missing out. Still, before you go, if you've ever felt left out by the people who were supposed to love you most, you're not alone. Clara's story is just beginning, and I promise, it gets powerful. Hit subscribe and tell me in the comments. Would you still go to that wedding, or walk away like Clara did? Your own family left you out of your siblings' wedding. Would you confront them, or stay silent? The morning smelled like rain and hot asphalt when I turned off Burnside and headed east. The river to my right, a long ribbon of pewter under a low sky. I told myself I was only driving out to drop off a set of chisels Dad had once lent me and never asked for back. It was a lie so thin even my steering wheel didn't believe it. I was going because I wanted to see if there was a version of this where I hadn't been erased. Suburbs replaced warehouses, then the road narrowed, hedges clipping past my windows like disciplined soldiers. I rolled over the familiar speed bump with the same small involuntary wince I'd had since high school, and there it was. The Bennett house. A craftsman with a sagging porch swing and cedar shingles in need of oil, wearing its good bones like an old suit. Dad's shape appeared in the garage bay, a silhouette bent over something metallic. Of course. Height and wrench. He straightened when he saw my car, wiped his hands on a towel and then, like always, looked beyond me toward the house as if checking who else might be watching. "Clara," he said, not quite a smile. "Hey, Dad." I lifted the canvas bag. "Brought your chisels." "They were yours," he said. "Once." He stepped back, letting the shadow of the garage swallow him. "Your mother's inside." Of course she was. The screen door creaked its same tired note as I pushed it open. Inside, the air was warm and sweet, the cinnamon and coffee armor Mom wore for unpleasant conversations. She had her back to me at the counter, hands fussing with a tray of mugs no one had asked for. "Clara," she said without turning, like she'd been practicing my name. "Mom." I didn't step farther than the rug. It felt important not to cross that line. She turned, smile arranged carefully, eyes shining with the kind of brightness that isn't quite tears. "I was just about to call you." "No," I said gently. "You weren't." Something flickered across her face. Then she lifted the coffee carafe. "Decaf? You always get headaches if..." "I want to know why I wasn't invited to Ryan's wedding." The carafe paused midair. A small clink as it met the counter. She inhaled, slow, like she was about to swim underwater. "Oh honey. It's complicated." "It isn't," I said. "It's binary." I was either invited or I wasn't. She pressed fingertips to her forehead, then found the script. You've been so busy with the business. We didn't want to put pressure on you. Ryan, well, he's very sensitive. He thought you might not approve of the pace of things. The pace, I repeated. They've known each other how long? 7 months. 8, she corrected with a pride that landed like a slap. He says family is important. You can be so independent. Independent. The word that had been polished into an accusation. Is that what we're calling responsible now? I asked. Independent. I gestured toward the fridge. It still had the class photos and orthodontist reminders of a family that believed in documentation. Did the mail lose my invitation? Or did you never send it? She put the carafe down as if it had become heavy. We thought it'd be awkward. After the loan. The way she said the loan, soft, sympathetic like a dog that had bit a neighbor but was still lovable, made my jaw clench. The startup he never started. The one I co-signed so it wouldn't look bad for him. The one I'm still paying interest on because he forgot to set up autopay. He was in a rough patch, she said, her voice brightening in that brittle way it did when she needed the world to be rounder than it was. And you can be very critical when people are trying. Dad shuffled in then, carrying the smell of oil and rain. He didn't look at me. He looked at the coffee like it might tell him what to do. Don't make this harder than it is, he mumbled. For who? I asked, turning to him. For Ryan? For you? Or for me, who got cut out to make the picture tidier? We didn't cut you out, Mom said, the brightness gone, the steel showing. We adjusted. You're always so strong. You don't need events the way Ryan does. There was the theology of our house. The strong don't need, the weak deserve. Strong doesn't mean I don't belong, I said. Her face softened, practiced tenderness, and she reached for me. I stepped back. The rug edge pressed against my heel. What is this really about? I asked. Because you're giving me one story when the photos are giving everyone else the truth. She opened and closed her mouth once. Then, we wanted peace, Clara. You ask questions. You make people explain themselves. And Ryan, you know how he is. He'd get flustered and then you'd say something and then we'd arrive at reality, I said. The point of a wedding is not reality, she snapped, then instantly softened. I mean, it's happiness. Can't you just be happy for him even if you're not there? The room seemed to tilt, the floor a fraction off level in a house my father could fix with one shim if he wanted. I have been happy for him, I said. I have been happy for all of you for years. When he totaled my car and you said, boys will be boys. When he bounced checks and you said, times are hard. When he called at midnight and I drove across town because he forgot his keys. I have been happy and helpful and quiet. And now, I'm not invited to witness the part you've decided proves we're a family. Mom's hands found the coffee again. She poured, splashed a little, didn't wipe it. Honey, please. Don't be dramatic. I'm being exact. Clara. Dad's voice had more gravel than volume. He finally looked at me. What do you want us to say? I thought about that. I thought about the hundreds of things I wanted. We were wrong. We chose ease over honesty. We used your steadiness as a reason to ignore you. We are sorry. Behind those, a smaller want, quieter. Invite me because you mean it, not because I made you look at yourselves. Nothing, I said. I don't want anything you have to be pushed to give. A muscle ticked in Mom's cheek. So you're punishing us? No, I said. I'm stepping out of the role I never auditioned for. The clock over the sink ticked, measured, judicial. Dad put his mug down and it made that dull ceramic sound of defeat. Clara, your brother needs this to be perfect, Mom said. He has been through so much. He finally found a woman who believes in him. I pictured Isabella, luminous in white with a caption that made my phone light up like a siren. I pictured Ryan's text to me from different numbers over the years. Hey, can you cover this? Just until Friday? I pictured my bank app the morning after, the numbers clicking down. Good, I said. Then I hope it is. I hope he gets everything he thinks will fix him. Will you at least send a gift? She asked, and there it was. The tiny confession nested inside the polite request. Mom, I said. I already did. A silence so clean it felt like a freshly planed board. Then Mom blinked, exasperation rearranging itself into pity. You always make things so complicated, Clara. Interrogate love until it leaves. I let that one pass through me. If I touched it, it would explode. I turned, the rug edge finally leaving my heel, and opened the screen door. The day had brightened just enough to make the driveway shine. "Where are you going?" Dad asked, though his voice said he already knew. "Away from here," I said. "Let Ryan have his perfect wedding." "Clara." Mom followed a step, the word like a leash thrown and missing. "We're family." I stopped with one hand on the frame. The wood was smooth where generations had touched it, a softness earned by friction. "Is that what we are?" I asked without looking back. "Because families don't erase. They edit, sure. They argue in the margins. But they don't cut out whole chapters and still call it the same book." I stepped onto the porch. The swing creaked on its chain. The air tasted like rain that couldn't decide. At the bottom of the steps, I paused long enough to feel what I was leaving, and then longer to notice what I wasn't taking with me. I unlocked my car, slid in, and stared at the house through the windshield. The hedges, the porch, the window where my childhood braids had reflected back at me before piano recitals and science fairs. It looked exactly the same. I was the thing that had changed. I drove to Copper Finch, the coffee shop where Leah liked to hold impromptu staff meetings because the pastries were better than the ones near the job site. The bell chimed when I walked in, and Leah looked up from behind the counter, eyes scanning my face, taking inventory of damage. "So," she said, already pulling a double shot. "Cinnamon," I said, and she grinned because she knew I meant Mom's and not the latte, and slid me a glass of water first because she also knew I forgot to breathe when I was trying not to break. We tucked into the corner booth. The cafe smelled like orange peel and ambition. Leah didn't push. She let the air settle around my words. "They said I'm independent," I said finally. "That inviting me would make things awkward. That I interrogate love." Leah snorted. "You interrogate lies. They just sound the same if you live on a steady diet of both." I stared at the ring of condensation my glass had left on the table. I kept thinking there was a sentence that would make them hear me. "There is," Leah said. "It's short. It's not a speech." She sipped. "You already said it." I knew which one she meant. Let them have their perfect wedding without me. The words sat in my chest like a stone and like a key. We talked about tile suppliers and a library ladder that wouldn't clear a beam by 2 inches. We talked about invoices and the city inspector and a client who wanted original plaster to behave like new drywall. We didn't talk about the wedding. The world, blessedly, had other rooms. On my way home, the sky cracked open and did what it had been threatening all morning. Rain gathered on the wipers. I let it blur the streets into a watercolor. When I pulled into my driveway, the rosemary in my planter boxes sparkled like it had been jewel-dusted. Inside, I toed off my boots and leaned my head against the cool glass of the back door. Across the yard, the neighbor's kid had left a tiny red tricycle tipped on its side. 2 finches huddled on the fence, puffed against the weather, heads in. I picked up my phone from the counter where I'd flung it earlier. 3 missed calls from Mom. 1 text, "Please don't be stubborn. We can find you a seat. Maybe in the back near Aunt Trudy?" An invitation to the margins. I typed slowly, made myself read it twice before sending. "I wish Ryan happiness. I won't be there." 3 dots appeared, then vanished. A minute later, nothing. The silence was almost kind. I placed the phone face down the way one sets a stone on a grave. I didn't turn on any lights. The house held the dimness like a secret. In the window, my reflection looked like a version of me I recognized from child pictures. Same shape, same stillness. Only this time the stillness wasn't fear. It was the pause you choose before doing the next right thing. The rain eased. Somewhere across town, menus were being proofed and chairs counted. Somewhere, a boy I used to protect practiced vows. Somewhere, a girl in white rehearsed walking toward a promise that would not save anyone. I made tea, not coffee, because it felt like a promise you keep to yourself. I sat at my table and let the steam warm my face until the cup stopped giving. When the kettle ticked into quiet, I said it out loud, not angrily, not for anyone else, just to hear it hold. Let them have their perfect wedding without me. And for the first time since the photo, my breath didn't snag on the edges. 3 days after that conversation, the smell of rain still lingered on my jacket. Work kept me busy. The final detailing of the Wentworth Library restoration, 12-foot shelves and brass rails that gleamed under the skylights. Physical labor had always been my sanctuary. You can't think about emotional debris when you're stripping paint from century-old oak. At 6 p.m. my phone buzzed. "Leah." Need you at Copperfinch. Something you should see. When I arrived, she already had 2 mugs waiting. Steam rose between us like a curtain. She slid her phone across the table. Don't shoot the messenger, she said. The screen lit with a series of photos. Ryan, my brother, at downtown lounge, arm around a woman whose hair spilled down in champagne curls. Not Isabella. In one shot they were laughing over martinis. In another her hand rested on his chest. The last one, his lips against her neck. The room spun, not from shock but from the dull déjà vu of seeing a pattern return like rot beneath new paint. When was this? I asked. Last night. 11:30. My friend works the bar. I pushed the phone back toward her. So, she said carefully, are you going to tell Isabella? Or your parents? Old Clara would've. She would've stormed into the story like a firefighter, sirens blaring, trying to save everyone from themselves. No, I said, surprising both of us. Leah blinked. No. I'm not invited, remember? It's not my place. That's not you. Maybe it should be. I sipped the cooling coffee. I've spent half my life putting out fires my family started. Maybe it's time I stopped smelling like smoke. She studied me for a long moment. So you'll just let it happen? I'll let the truth do what it does best, surface. Outside, the city lights shimmered on wet pavement. Somewhere across town, rehearsal dinner laughter echoed inside a hall I'd never step into. That night at home, I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window. My phone kept buzzing. Texts from coworkers who'd seen the same photos circulating on social media. Is that your brother? Wow, messy. I muted every chat. It felt strange, this deliberate inaction. Like standing still while the storm passed instead of rushing out with an umbrella that would just turn inside out. The silence was heavier than guilt but lighter than obligation. 2 weeks later the wedding day arrived. Portland's summer sky wore a rare blue, the kind that makes everything look innocent. I stayed in my house, barefoot, restoring an antique drafting table I'd rescued from a demolition site. Sandpaper rasped under my fingers, rhythmic and grounding. Then vibration. My phone rattled across the wood. 27 notifications in under 5 minutes. I hesitated, then swiped. The first video froze mid-frame on Ryan and Isabella, center of a grand ballroom draped in white roses. The caption, Ridgeview Estate Disaster. I tapped play. The footage was shaky, someone filming between guests. Ryan's voice cut through the music. Hoarse, angry. You knew I was seeing someone? Isabella's mascara streaked her cheeks. Everyone knew, she shouted. Gasps. Chaos. And then the sound. A sharp crack as his hand connected with her face. Screams. Camera shaking, dropping to the floor. I paused the video, my thumb trembling. A flood of texts followed. Leah, are you seeing this? Mrs. Dorsey. Dear, it's on Channel 9. Marcus, from work, your family's on the news. Holy hell. I opened the local station feed. Prominent engineer Ryan Bennett arrested for assaulting fiancée during wedding reception. The footage replayed, this time from a different angle. My mother's horrified face in the background, my father trying to intervene. Reporters outside the estate gates, the camera panning across shattered glass and fallen flowers. I turned the phone off. The house was suddenly so quiet I could hear the rain gutters ticking. Part of me felt the reflex, the old muscle memory to grab my keys, drive across town, start fixing. But another voice, calmer and older, said, no. I poured another inch of Merlot, the liquid catching the last light. My reflection in the window looked unfamiliar, steadier. Hours later the phone rang again. I let it buzz 4 times before answering. Her voice came broken, high-pitched. Claire, please. Ryan's hurt. He's in custody. Isabella pressed charges. We need you. The same 3 words I'd heard my entire life, rearranged but identical. We need you. I closed my eyes. I could almost feel the years stacked behind that sentence. The midnight drives, the emergency loans, the babysitting, the silences I filled with solutions. I'm sorry, Mom, I said quietly. I can't fix this one. She inhaled sharply. He's your brother. And I'm your daughter, I said. That didn't stop you from crossing my name off the guest list. Silence. Then a whisper. You don't mean that. I do. The line went dead. I sat there, phone warm in my hand, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the room. For once I didn't feel small. I felt exact. The next morning the headlines were everywhere. Engineer's wedding ends in arrest. Bride hospitalized after public altercation. I scrolled through none of them. Instead I opened my calendar, moved the upcoming family wedding placeholder into the trash folder, and replaced it with a single new note. Boundary kept. Then I closed my laptop and went back to the drafting table. The wood was scarred but solid. Every line of grain told a story about pressure and endurance. I ran my hand over it, feeling where the splinters had once been, and thought maybe some things heal when you stop sanding them down. If you discovered your siblings' secret affair before the wedding, would you expose the truth, or let life reveal it? Share your thoughts in the comments. The Sunday sky was offensively clear, the kind of blue that pretends nothing bad ever happens beneath it. I woke early anyway. My hands ached from sanding, the good kind of ache that usually meant satisfaction. Not today. Today was Ryan's wedding day, and my deliberate absence. I made coffee, set out new brushes, pretended the rhythmic scrape of bristles on primer could drown out everything else. At 11 a.m. my phone began to hum. Then vibrate harder. Then rattle across the table as if it too had something urgent to confess. 23 notifications in 2 minutes. The first was a push alert from a local outlet. Breaking. Altercation reported at Ridgeview Estate wedding. My stomach dropped. I opened the video. Shaky footage. White roses, chandeliers, guests frozen mid-gasp. My brother's voice, raw and slurred with fury. "You knew I was seeing her?" A woman's sob, Isabella's. Her veil torn halfway from the comb. "Everyone knew," she screamed. And then the sound. That sharp, flat crack of skin against skin that silences a room. Gasps. A chair fell. The camera spun, catching glimpses. My mother's hand over her mouth, my father lunging forward. The feed cut to chaos and static. I shut my laptop. The silence that followed was so dense it felt padded. The phone rang. I let it go twice, 3 times then answered. Her voice was high, cracked glass. "Clara. Oh God, it's horrible, they took him away, Ryan's been arrested, she's pressing charges. Please, we need you." Those last 3 words again, the family prayer. "We need you." I gripped the counter edge until my knuckles whitened. "I can't, Mom." "You can't," she repeated, disbelief gasping through the line. "He's your brother. And I'm your daughter," I said evenly. "That didn't stop you from crossing my name off the list." Silence. Rain began ticking against the window even though the forecast had promised none. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "I do. I mean every syllable." The line clicked dead. For hours I didn't move. I watched condensation gather on my coffee mug until it cooled into a film. Part of me, that reflexive oldest child muscle, twitched to drive, to fix, to explain. But a deeper part stayed still, as if finally understanding that stillness can also be an action. By dusk the headlines had multiplied. Engineer arrested after public assault. Bride hospitalized. Family declines comment. My phone pinged with sympathy texts from co-workers who pretended not to know it was my family. I muted them all and opened my calendar. The entry labeled family wedding sat there, pristine and blue. I deleted it, replaced it with 2 words. Boundary kept. When night settled, I sat by the window again. Outside, Portland's lights shimmered like scattered sequins. Somewhere, reporters camped outside Ridgeview's gates. Somewhere, Mom was performing grief for cameras she secretly loved. Somewhere, Ryan was tasting the consequences that had always been mine to swallow. I poured half a glass of wine and whispered into the quiet. This time the fire burns where it started. For the first time in my life I slept through the night. 3 days after the headlines died down, the rain came back to Portland. Steady, cleansing, indifferent. I thought maybe this time the storm wasn't about me. Then the knock came. It was soft at first, polite in that guilty way. By the 3rd round I knew exactly who it was. I looked through the peephole and saw my father, drenched to the bone, hair plastered to his forehead, water streaming off his jacket. He looked older, smaller even. I hesitated, then opened the door halfway. "Dad." He cleared his throat. "Clara, can we talk?" Everything in me wanted to say no. But the rain dripping from his eyelashes made it impossible. I stepped aside. "You have 10 minutes, I said. "And it better not be about Ryan." He exhaled like someone who'd been holding his breath for months. "It's worse than Ryan." I boiled water for tea, a habit more than a courtesy. When I turned around, he was standing in the middle of my kitchen, clutching a manila envelope like a life raft. He set it on the table. The edges were damp. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Your mother wanted to, but she thought." "She thought what?" "That it'd ruin what little family we have left." I folded my arms. "You might want to start before the water boils dry." He sat, shoulders sagging. "We've been using your money for something else." For a second I didn't process it. "What money?" "The monthly checks. For the mortgage." My pulse stuttered. "The ones I've been sending since you said the house was in trouble?" He nodded. "It wasn't the mortgage. It was for a loan." "What kind of loan?" He pushed the envelope toward me. "A home equity line of credit. We took it out 4 years ago." I pulled the papers free. Bank statements. Official letters. Legal notices. The numbers blurred together until one stood out in bold. $196,000. "You took out a helic?" My voice was calm only because shock hadn't decided what shape to take yet. "Yes," he said quietly. "Your mother and I co-signed. For Ryan." The tea kettle whistled, sharp and relentless. I let it scream while I stared at him. "For Ryan." He nodded again, hands trembling. "After his last layoff, he needed a house. Somewhere stable. We wanted to help. He promised to pay it back." "He promised?" I repeated. "You forged a second mortgage on your home, the one I've been paying because Ryan promised?" He rubbed his face. "Your mother thought he'd turn things around once he married Isabella. But after what happened at the wedding." I cut him off. "How much have I sent you?" He hesitated. "About $1,100 a month. For years." I grabbed my phone, opened the calculator. The digits lined up like a confession. $52,800. "That's how much I've paid toward your lie," I said. He swallowed. "It wasn't meant to go this far." "It always goes this far," I said, my voice low now. "You just never expect to get caught." I took photos of every document. The shutter sound punctuated the silence like a gavel. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Documenting fraud." "Clara, you can't." "I absolutely can," I said. "You falsified residence information. That's bank fraud. Do you realize that?" His face collapsed. "We didn't mean." "Yes, you did. You meant every bit of it. You just didn't mean to get found out." He leaned forward, pleading. "We could lose the house." "Then you should have thought about that before you mortgaged it for a son who can't even keep his hands off someone else's fiancée." The words landed like slaps and still he said nothing. My phone buzzed. A text from Leah. "Call me when you can. I have a contact in mortgage fraud investigations." I smiled, humorless. "See? The universe provides." "Clara, please." His voice cracked. "This would destroy your mother." "Good," I said. "Maybe she'll finally see what she's been protecting." He looked down at the papers between us. The ink had bled slightly from the rain, curling at the edges. "I came here because I couldn't live with it anymore," he whispered. "Not after what happened at the wedding. Not after we left you out." For a moment the exhaustion behind his eyes looked like honesty. But I'd been fooled by that expression before. I gathered the papers, stacked them neatly and slid them back into the envelope. "You've done enough confessing for one night," I said. "I'll decide what happens next." He rose slowly, nodding. "Just remember we're still family." "Are we?" I asked. "Because family doesn't steal. It asks." He didn't answer. When the door closed behind him, the sound was softer than I expected. Later, I sat at my dining table, the envelope in front of me, tea long gone cold. Outside, the rain drummed against the windows. Steady, cleansing, relentless. I picked up my pen, wrote one sentence across a notepad. "Tomorrow, gather proof." It wasn't rage that moved my hand, but precision. The kind of clarity that only comes when the lies finally stop echoing. By dawn, I'd photographed every page inside the envelope. The smell of paper and damp ink clung to the kitchen, a strange perfume of betrayal. When I finally set the camera down, the sun was beginning to rise behind the fog, smearing gray light across my counters. The old me would have called Mom immediately, voice shaking, trying to understand. The woman sitting here now only reached for her notebook. At the top of a clean page I wrote one line. prepare the table. 2 days later, I sent a message to the only relative I still trusted, Aunt Margaret. Dad's sister. Sharp, retired lawyer allergic to hypocrisy. When she answered the phone, her voice was steady as always. "Tell me everything," she said. I did. Every number. Every forged signature. Every lie. When I finished, she didn't gasp or soothe me. She simply said, "Good. We'll do it properly. Make them face it in daylight." The next afternoon, I transformed my dining room into an evidence gallery. The oak table I'd restored myself stretched beneath the light like a courtroom bench. I laid out the documents in chronological order. Bank statements, transfers, loan forms. Each photo I'd taken printed and labeled. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee not because I needed it but because guilt always smelled like coffee in our family. When the doorbell rang at 5:30, my heartbeat didn't even quicken. Aunt Margaret entered first, her silver hair pinned neatly, her expression unreadable. "You look ready," she said. "I am." 15 minutes later, the second ring. I opened the door to find them all. Mom in her beige cardigan of forced normalcy, Dad behind her looking hollow, and Ryan standing slightly apart, face pale and thinner than I remembered. They filed in like a procession to confession. No one spoke for the first minute. Mom looked around at the papers spread across my table and tried a brittle smile. "What's all this drama, Clara? If you need help with your finances, stop." My voice came out sharper than I intended, but it worked. For once she did. "Sit down," I said. They did. "This," I continued, sliding the first sheet forward, "is the home equity line of credit you took out 4 years ago. $196,000 with Ryan listed as co-signer, claiming he lived at the property." Dad's shoulders folded inward. Mom's lips parted in protest. "This," I said, placing the next page, "is my rental agreement from 12 years ago proving I moved out. Which means listing me as a resident was fraud." "Clara," Mom began, but I lifted a hand. "Don't interrupt." I pushed forward the stack of bank statements. "These show my transfers. $1,100 every month for 4 years. $52,800 total. Money you told me was keeping the house from foreclosure." Ryan's eyes darted between them. "Wait," he said. "You said." She said, I cut in, that I was helping with maintenance. Roof repairs. Retirement expenses. None of it true. Aunt Margaret watched quietly, her gaze shifting like a metronome. I laid down the photographs next. Images from the bank lobby camera showing Mom depositing my checks. "These are yours, Mom." Proof that every dollar went toward the HELOC, the one funding Ryan's house. Mom inhaled sharply. "I only did what I had to do to keep a roof over his head. He's been through so much." "You kept that roof," I said evenly, "with my money and my trust." Ryan turned to her. "You told me Clara approved everything." "I didn't want you two fighting," she snapped. Dad rubbed his forehead. "We never meant to hurt anyone." "Yes you did," I said. "You just never thought you'd get caught." Silence spread like fog. Finally Aunt Margaret cleared her throat. "It's fraud, Cynthia. You know that." Mom's face crumpled, her tears deliberate. "Are you going to call the police on your own parents? On your brother?" "I don't need to," I said. "I just need everything in writing. You'll transfer the side lot to me, the one the Millers have been trying to buy for years. It's worth about the same as what I lost. After that we're done." Dad looked up, eyes tired. "We can do that." Mom's head snapped toward him. "Harold." "No," he said, voice firm for once. "She's right." Aunt Margaret nodded. "I'll have the paperwork drawn tomorrow." I gathered the photos, stacked them neatly, and pushed the envelope back toward my parents. "Keep it," I said. "So you remember what lies cost." No one spoke again. When they left, the silence in my house wasn't empty. It was earned. That night, I sat by the window, the city lights flickering below. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel responsible for saving anyone. The only thing left to restore now was myself. 2 weeks later, I walked into the downtown title office with Aunt Margaret beside me. The conference room smelled like toner and peppermint tea. A lawyer in a gray suit explained the paperwork in his careful, neutral tone. "Sign here, initial there, transfer complete." Dad signed first. His hand shook only once. Mom hesitated, eyes flicking toward me as if looking for rescue. I didn't move. She pressed the pen down anyway, her name curling across the page like a reluctant apology. When it was my turn, I wrote in clean strokes, Clara Bennett. No middle initial. No hesitation. The clerk gathered the papers, stamped them, and slid a final copy across the table. Congratulations, Ms. Bennett. The side lot is officially yours. I didn't smile. I just nodded. The sound of the stamp still echoed like a closing door. Outside, the sky was a pale blue wash over the city. Mom stood on the sidewalk, clutching her purse like a shield. Dad looked at the pavement. I'm sorry, he said finally, voice raw. For everything. I believed him, but forgiveness wasn't part of today's vocabulary. I don't need an apology, I said. I just need peace. He nodded once, understanding more than she ever would. Mom opened her mouth, thought better of it, and turned away. Aunt Margaret touched my arm. You did right, she said. You told the truth. That's more than most manage in a lifetime. I exhaled slowly. The air felt wider somehow. 3 days later, a certified check arrived in the mail. Payment from the Millers who bought the lot. I sat at my kitchen table, sunlight spilling across the oak surface, and studied the numbers. It wasn't everything I'd lost, but it was enough. I folded the check into my wallet and whispered to no one, balance restored. The next morning my phone buzzed. Nyla. No, not Nyla, that was Deborah's story. Ryan, my brother. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long time. Then another followed. Thank you for not pressing charges. For giving them the chance to make it right. Beneath it, a photo. 2 kids I barely knew anymore, his children grinning with missing teeth. I typed back slowly. I'm glad they're okay. I hope you build something solid for them. Without taking from anyone else. 3 dots blinked, then disappeared. No reply. That was fine. A week later, Mom texted me. Dinner Sunday? I replied, not yet. Maybe one day. Boundaries. They no longer felt like walls, they felt like architecture. Saturday afternoon, Aunt Margaret stopped by with a small parcel. Inside, wrapped in tissue, was grandfather's pocket watch, gold case dulled by time. They found it while cleaning the attic, she said. Your mother wanted you to have it. I wound it gently. The mechanism clicked, then began to tick, steady, stubborn. The sound filled the quiet room like a heartbeat returning after years underwater. Maybe time doesn't fix what's broken, I thought. It just teaches you when to stop repeating the same repairs. That evening I sat on my porch swing, watching sunset smear gold over the rooftops. The wind smelled of rain and sawdust, my favorite combination, work and renewal. I opened my journal, the same one that had carried every note of this long unraveling, and wrote. The softest revenge is peace and quiet. No fireworks. No courtroom drama. Just the calm that comes when the fixing finally stops. I closed the book, listening to the tick of the pocket watch and the whisper of the wind through the rosemary pots. For the first time in my life, the silence didn't ask anything of me. Simply stayed, gentle, honest mine. Sometimes the strongest revenge isn't payback. It's peace. Would you forgive your family after this or walk away for good? Tell me in the comments and subscribe for more stories like this.